good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is about the Nigeria movie industry. The Nigerian movie industry, which is also called Nollywood. And this has to do with where the Nigerian movie industry is at right now on the world stage. Right now, the Nigerian movie industry, which is Nollywood, considered the second biggest movie industry in the world, right behind Hollywood. Right behind Hollywood. And it might sound strange that small movie industry that started some years back in Nigeria, Lagos, will today be the second biggest movie industry. Went past the Chinese movie industry, the Indian movie industry, and now is the second biggest movie industry in the world. This has to be, a great news for the people of Nollywood, because there's no any other scripts that you can talk about looking at where they came from and where they are right now on the world stage. And looking at where Nollywood is at right now, I think it's also about time that the Nollywood movie industry also now telling the African story in a very positive way, incorporating our cultures and the society as a whole, but also focusing on some of the positive things that come with our cultures and society. And why am I saying this? I watched some Nollywood movies, and I've also watched a lot of Hollywood movies. And if you look at Hollywood and you look at how Hollywood has been able to sell the American story to the world, there's no dispute that most people outside of the United States know about the United States of America, not because they have visited America themselves, but through the lens of movies that they have seen, the characters, the stories that are being told through these movies about America. So basically, a movie is about telling a story and cultures of a country or place and so on and so forth. So if we want to take the playbook of Hollywood, then we Africans also have to now use Nollywood to tell our story. So the people of the world will also come to know the positive side of Africa's culture and its story and the society as a whole. Because this is the opportune time for Nollywood to use this to also sell Africa to the world. Because it's not easy to be the number 2 movie industry in the world. And to get to that point right now, that means people all over the world are watching Nigerian movies, African movies, all over the world. So what you put out there has a big impact of how people perceive or see the African continent, its culture, and the society as a whole. But quite often, our Nigerian movies talk about the African culture in terms of voodoo, juju, ritual money, and 419 cases and so on and so forth. Which there's nothing wrong with that, because it must be doing something real good. Like the old saying, if it ain't broke, there's no need to fix it, because it's working. That is why you see all these people from all over the world now tuning in to Netflix, Hulu, and all these other platforms to watch Nigerian movies. So there must be something good coming from these Nigerian Hollywood producers that people are gravitating towards these Nigerian movies. So there's nothing wrong with that, with us portraying our African cultures in terms of voodoo, juju, ritual money, 419 stuff, and so on and so forth. That is the heck of an achievement. But the problem I have with that is that I don't even have a problem with that. But the whole thing is that I think it's about time that we also take the playbook of Hollywood to also incorporate some of these our cultures that we have in our various African countries, especially Nigeria. Talking about, for instance, the issue of voodooism, ritual money stuff that sometimes we show in our movies, and bringing out the positive aspect of it with it. Because if you look at some of these voodoo movies that you watch, voodooism is part of African culture. there's no African culture on the continent of Africa that doesn't have voodooism. Voodooism is like a religion. As a matter of fact, there's not that much difference of voodooism from Catholicism. Catholicism and voodooism is pretty much about the same thing. So if you look at most of the scenes that you see in these movies with regards to the fetish priest, people going to a fetish priest for powers and for prayers and for the gods to help them and so on and so forth, it's the same thing like most religions are. It's the same thing. There's nothing much different from what the African voodoo man sitting in the fetish priest hut doing from what the priest doing in the Catholic Church with incense and so on and so forth. But how do we bring the positive aspect of it instead of always showing just the negative aspect of it in terms of like people going there to seek for revenge against maybe a family member or a friend and so on and so forth? But we also have to remember people also go there to seek advice from these fetish priests so that they can relate to the gods. And these are all about beliefs. These are all about beliefs. So sometimes, you might believe it or you might not believe it. So it's basically it's a religion and it's about beliefs. But at the end of the day, we have to portray the positive aspect of it, the positive things that this voodooism beliefs also does in our African culture. Because African culture also has this idea of going to the gods to seek advice in so many areas. In some cases, during marriages, during family disputes, during festivals, and so on and so forth, which has nothing to do with going to kill somebody or anything. So we have to start portraying this positive aspect of voodooism that we have in our African culture. Just like the talking about voodooism, and then you talk about ritual money. Look, to be frank with you fellas, I don't believe in ritual money, and I don't think there's ritual money. But a lot of us have heard about this ritual money either through movies or through hearsay on the streets in our various African countries, because they say, oh, there's a fetish priest here, and people are killing people and taking their body parts to them for ritual money and so on and so forth. And you see this in the movies. By the end of the day, how many of you Africans know of these things happening in these places? I bet you about 99.9% of Africans have never even been to a fetish priest. Have never even observed any of these things. But we've come to believe it. And we've come to believe it through hearsay, and in some cases now, through the movies and the advertisement that comes from these fetish priests on various African TV networks and so on and so forth. So the point I'm making is this, to make a long story short, is that where Nollywood, the Nigerian movie industry, is at right now on the world stage, it's about time. Yes, we don't have to fix anything. But basically incorporate the positive things that also come with our African cultures. So in essence, we are going to do movies that also have to portray, even when you're doing voodoo movies or doing juju movies, has to show the positive aspect of it in terms of what some of these things does to help build the family and so on and so forth. Instead of always showing just the negative and the blood side of it and so on and so forth, which a lot of people have become accustomed to it. But at the end of the day, now we are at the world stage now. We are on the world stage right now. Our movies are no more only watched in Africa anymore. It's not all over the world. You talk about the number 2 biggest movie industry. So let's start now doing movies that will showcase the beautiful culture of Africa, where we talk about the positive things, how these things have also contributed to the family system as well as our cultures in our various African countries. And then you look at other movies that have also come up, like for instance, Wakanda, The Woman King, and all these things. There are a lot of Woman King stories in Africa. There are a lot of Woman King stories in Africa. It just happens to have just started coming out recently. But when you talk about the Queen Nzinga of the Ndongo Kingdom of Angola, who stood up and led men against the the Portuguese, who were trying to dictate to them and to rule over their country and so on and so forth. You have the Yaa Asantewaa story of the Ashanti Kingdom, who also led men against the British. So there are a lot of positive stories that can make it big on the world stage that can be told to the world. Showcase what Africa is really about when it comes to the movie industry. And I hope these movie producers and so on will take this up and look at some of these stories I'm talking about in terms of this, what do you call it, a woman king and all that stuff. And we can also portray good things about some of our great civilizations. Talk about Timbuktu. I mean, there are so many beautiful things that can be incorporated into these movies. Okay? And these things are going to be, I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to be serious for Africa. Because at the end of the day, you have to tell your story. For far too long, Africa's story has always been told by outsiders. I mean, even when you talk about just recent Woman King, Wakanda, and so on and so forth, I mean, even though they were played by African Americans in America, but the story pretty much is coming from the Black community in America. Whilst these stories are all over in Africa. I mean, I bet you can go to most African countries and you find a Woman King story there. It's nothing new in Africa. But sometimes when these things come out through Hollywood, it seems like, oh, where was this? Is this new? No. There are so many stories that can be told. And talking about the positive aspect of it, a case in point is like, let's look at the biggest movie in the world. I mean, the highest gross movie and the most watched movie in the world. Which is The Godfather. What does The Godfather do? The Godfather talks about the Italian culture. It talks about Sicily. Even though it's a mobster movie, it portrays the positive side of the family network of these Sicilian families, as well as also the bad side of it, the mob side of it, of murdering and killing and so on and so forth. By the end of the day, how did The Godfather become the number one movie watched in the world? Because people like the story. Even though it has some bad stuff about the story about it in terms of the killers and so on and so forth. By the end of the day, the story is what made people like Godfather. So you can make movies, also portray some of these 419 cases going on in Nigeria and across Africa. That basically, you showcase the intelligence of these people. I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of movies that are basically like 419 that have come out of Hollywood. And we praise them in America. They praise them in Europe. But how come that when it comes to Africa, it has to be different? Why can't we also showcase the intelligence of these people who use these same systems to build something, even though it might be fraudulent, by the end of the day, it has a lot of intelligence that goes in it for them to do that. I mean, quite recently, the guy, Raymond Abbas, the Nigerian dude that was arrested in Dubai, who's also called Hush Puppy, the influencer guy. I mean, I heard a lot of people vying for to write a movie series about him. As a matter of fact, 50 Cent, I heard talking about making movie, series about Raymond Abbas, Hush Puppy, which is good. I mean, even though Hush Puppy, might be considered a fraudster, there are a lot of fraudster movies that have portrayed these fraudsters who happens to European, how smart and intelligent and how they're able to craft these ideas and come up with it. And the same thing can be said of Hush Puppy. I mean, Hush Puppy, whether he's a fraudster or not, also had to come up with a lot of intelligence to be able to put these things together. So there's nothing wrong, to showcase the intellectual ability of a fraudster who happens to be a black man and a Nigerian. And it's for the world also to see, because it's been done so many times. You talk about these mafia movies as well as a lot of these fraudster movies that have been done in Europe, that a lot of people love these movies. But at the end of the day, it also portrays the intellectual ability, the intelligence of these fraudsters. And the same thing can be said of Hush Puppy, how he was able to put this thing together. And I'm so happy that 50 Cent, I don't know if he's really going to come out with it. If he's able to come out with it, that would be great to tell the story. So basically what I'm trying to say is this. Movies tell stories about people, their cultures, and society as a whole. And looking at where the Nigerian movie industry is right now, it's about time we put together a very formidable force to tell the story of the African, where we can talk about the positive aspect of our African cultures. I mean, talk about everything about Africans, not just the negative stuff that some of these Nigerian movies portray, but blend it with some of the positive things that come out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, I remember talking to a friend of mine who was talking about polygamy that is seen in some of these movies and so on and so forth. Some of these polygamy societies in Africa have very positive impact on the family. I mean, polygamy goes way back. It's nothing new. It's all over in the Middle East, and a lot of almost every African country practices. By the end of the day, there was also this notion by these feminazis, this feminist group in the Western world, where they saw polygamy as human rights against women in most of these countries, which is not true. Because there are instances in, let's say, Nigeria, where some of the polygamous marriages, you have the first wife bringing even the second wife to the husband. They go out and search for a second wife for the husband, and then they live in harmony and they live peacefully as a family. So there are some positive aspects of it. So when you're doing movies of such that in nature, you also have to show the positive aspect of these things that also happens in our culture. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, let's not always think about what the Western culture is trying to tell us and how we have to do things to portray ourselves to fit into the Western narrative. No. We have the bully pulpit of the movie industry right now. We also have to use it to tell our story to fit our narrative. Because at the end of the day, when people are watching movies, they form opinions of the people or the culture that the movie is talking about. So it's about time we create this smart, intelligent movies that talks about the positive aspect of the African culture. And that is something that we have to look at. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we have so many movies that we can do and showcase the great history of Africa that we have to start now focusing on those things. And these are going to be real big hits because they love these stories. I mean, talk about a case like Timbuktu. And then you bring in the richest man ever to live, Mansa Musa, who also happens to have ruled the Mali Empire and where Timbuktu is. And all these can be made into movies to showcase the wealth of Africa long before the European even set foot onto the African continent. And then we can even do movies about Egypt. I mean, I know people talking about Cleopatra and all that stuff, whether she's white or she's black and so on and so forth. Look, now we also have the movie industry bully pulpit in Nigeria. We can write scripts and portray the original Kemetites of ancient Egypt, who happens to black Africans, and do movies of that nature to showcase the great civilizations that came out from the interior all the way to the northern part of Africa. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, we are now telling our story through our own narrative. And we are at the world stage right now where people are ready to watch African movies, and now they are now watching it. So I mean, the basic point I'm trying to make is this, fellows. I mean, yes, we're still going to do our movies showcasing, the cultures where we have these voodoo traditions and, all that stuff and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, let's also showcase the other positive things that comes with it. It doesn't always have to be just the negative aspect of it, where people only take away the negative part. But let's showcase the positives that comes with some of the negative things that some people might think is negative, which in other cases might not be negative, but it's part of our culture. And we have so many cultures in Africa. Cultures evolve from different places, the north, east, south, and west. So let's look at this and build better movie industry where we can showcase and tell the story of the African through the lens of the African. Because for far too long, our stories have always been told by other people, when in essence, the stories are right there in our own various African countries and so on and so forth. So fellas, this is a very short, what do you call it, video talking about the Nigerian movie industry. That's a heck of an achievement anyway, because if you look at where the Nigerian movie industry is today, there's no way you cannot say that's a heck of an achievement. I mean, now the number 2 biggest movie industry in the world. Let's use that to sell Africa, to sell the positive aspects of Africa, the positive culture, the beautiful culture of Africa, for the world to also see the Africa that have not been told to them. We have the stories, we have the historical aspect of everything on that continent. Let's start showcasing it. And I bet you guys, fellas, you see how much the world will gravitate towards watching these great movies that are going to come out of our great historical civilization and so on and so forth. So, fellas, if it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk. God bless you guys and have a great week. If I don't hear, you don't hear from me, have a wonderful new year. Wish you all the best. And with this new year comes with a lot of good things for all of my listeners and everybody. And also thank all of you guys who listened to me the past year, for all taking your time to listen and watch these videos and so on and so forth. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. So God bless you guys and have a great week. Thank you and peace and love.